guys, this is Carl from J&C Mileage, and hopefully after today you understand why. This Volkswagen GTI is 15,000 miles that Volkswagen actually did right.
Carl, are you insinuating Volkswagen isn't on top of their game? Come on, we've all heard about it. You, your neighbor, your dog, call it what you want. The Volkswagen emission scandal, Dieselgate, doesn't matter. Between 2009 and 2015, Volkswagen produced an estimated 11 million cars worldwide that failed to meet emissions regulations in dozens of countries. And as a result, they have become entangled in countless lawsuits. The early settlement figures range in the tens of billions. As a result, the Volkswagen Group has had to cut costs big time. Everything from job cuts to pulling Audi from Le Mans. To say that Volkswagen has hit rough seas would be a terrific understatement. Which is a shame, because this little GTI is a fantastic hot hatch. The 7th generation VW Golf went on sale in late 2014, and the GTI variant made a fairly significant departure from its predecessor. The biggest upgrade came in the form of the power plant. This Mark 7, with the optional performance package, makes around 230 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. That's about 20 more horsepower and 60 more pound-feet of torque over the last generation, thanks to a new beefy turbo. This generation makes a mark that the Mark 6 never did over the Mark 5, which many just considered an exaggerated facelift. Let's start with the exterior of the car. I think the overall shape is quite nice, especially compared to its competitors. When you look at it from the front three-quarter, the roofline of the car dipped down slightly, so you never quite see the end of the roof, giving it that sporty, hunkered down haunch look. When you get to the back of the car, the rear panel is tight and wide, especially with the lights and exhaust pushed out to the edge. Unfortunately, I think the way Volkswagen shot for that low hood line and tapered rear end made it tough for them in terms of the side profile. At the end of the day, it is a hatch, and sometimes it can look a little tall in the middle, like it somehow got a little swollen. However, I think Volkswagen did redeem themselves with those diamond-cut alloys and the painted and decal brake calipers. Little things like that make it feel like you're looking at an expensive, sporty car. At the front of the car are my favorite and least favorite parts. Unfortunately, this car is not spec'd with the lighting package, and so the headlights are your standard halogen, and not the bi-xenon adaptive front lights. I think this is the biggest sticking point of the exterior, because the rest of the exterior is very sleek and contemporary. But the standard bulbs just look a little antiquated and maybe a little cheap. Maybe I should qualify antiquated though, because my favorite part are these slates that house the fog lights. I think they look like the door panels of a Ferrari Testarossa, and that's just flat out cool. Now let's take a look at the interior. I have not driven as many cars as other drivers out there, but of the dozen or so that I have, I've come to really pay attention to three things as you step in: the seats, the steering wheel, and the shifter. The seats in this car are leather, because this is the SE trim, unlike the plaid cloth design of the S and Sport trim. I think the plaid cloth seats look amazing, and regardless of whether or not you like them, you have to give Volkswagen credit for still having something original, yet quite daring. I wish there was some way in which you could spec the cloth seats with the higher trims, or they could carry over some of the design elements to the leather seats. Now let's talk about the steering wheel. I love this steering wheel. It's flat bottomed with nice thickness on the sides and has the smaller airbag cover we are starting to see. Like the wheels and brakes, this steering wheel looks and feels expensive. It shares much of the same architecture as the wheels in Volkswagen's more expensive performance cars, like the Audi R8 and even the Bugatti Chiron. The steering itself is 2.2 turns lock to lock, very fast for any car. You have to pay a little bit of attention on the highway because of that. If you're not careful, it's hard to stay in your lane. While numb, especially compared to hydraulic systems I've driven, I understand the industry's shift to electric steering, and if you're a squarely mortal driver like me, I don't see any huge issues with that. Finally, the pedals. These pedals are aluminum, the clutch is quite light, and the brake and gas are fairly sensitive and responsive. I've driven BMWs where you feel like the brakes don't exist until you're halfway into the pedal. Although this was my first manual car, I did notice it was a little hard to learn how to heel toe because the brake and gas are not only a little spaced apart, but the brake sits higher than the gas. Other nice parts of the interior are the red aluminum and carbon looking trim throughout, and the nice bright lighting. The cabin never feels dim or old per se. We also have our classic golf ball shifter, which is a joy to go through the gears with. I also like how the whole center console is angled slightly towards the driver, giving you that cockpit feel. There's plenty of space for me in the front. I stand about 6'2", and I have about another 4 inches of headroom. The flat bottom wheel also helps with some legroom. The back is also fairly spacious and can comfortably fit 2 adults on long journeys and 3 if you're going somewhere close. One of the quirkiest parts of the interior is the storage. The center console storage space is hidden away and matches the trim, so when it's closed, it blends in. Even more hidden is the storage bin under the driver's side seat, which no one would really guess is there, giving you storage space to store all sorts of stuff you wouldn't want people to find. Last, and probably oddest of all, are all the slots for coins. There are so many little slots for quarters, both in the center console and in the glove box, you'll never need to try your luck against a parking meter again. Alright, enough looking and talking. Let's go for a drive.
I have been very lucky, very privileged to be able to put like 14,000 miles on this thing. You know, over those miles, I've collected some thoughts about it. I really enjoy the car. You know, I always wanted a manual growing up. That was always like the #1 thing on my list. You know, I think on a lot of car guy lists, that's like the holy grail. Very nice steering wheel, good steering, a little light. It's electric, so you don't get all the feel that you'd want, but this is great overall, especially in something at this price point. So the next thing, the pedals. So these pedals are pretty good. They're aluminum pedals. The only complaint I have about them is it's a little hard to heel toe. You know, the last gen GTI had a floor mounted pedal. This actually has a, I don't even know what you call it. You know, the ceiling, I guess, of the pedal box. So it's mounted from the ceiling, and so you don't actually heel toe. I would call it more like a toe-toe. Actually, I haven't driven that many other manual cars, but I've heard and I've read about it too that this isn't ideal, but definitely workable. The seat shape is great. It's got nice bolstering on the side, in the shoulders as well. I can imagine if you were a little bit of a bigger guy, it would be tough, but other than that, it's great. Next thing, obviously, is the shifter. 6-speed manual. It's a joy to drive. I have told my friends, I was like, listen, if you want to learn how to drive stick, we can go do it because it's so much fun, and I think it's such a valuable skill. And once you learn, there's so many other cars that you can drive and buy that sort of are opened up to you, and it just really makes it, as a car guy, the experience is just completely opened up. So then once you start driving, we have the engine. That's the next thing you notice. So this is a 2-liter 4-cylinder. The last GTI was not nearly as powerful as this one, and we're gonna turn onto a little straight road here, and we're gonna see it has some decent punch in first and second. That turbo kicks in at around 2.5. You get a little more at 3.5. Dies a little bit toward the top, but overall, first and second in this car, it's pretty fun. 220, 230 horsepower doesn't seem like that much anymore, but the great thing about this power is you can really roll into it and use it on the public road. It's a good little engine, gets great mileage. If you really work on it, you can get like 40 in this thing, which I find pretty amazing. The noise of the engine, yeah, I think the noise is okay. I think it's pretty good. One thing that they do with the Volkswagen is they pipe a little bit of noise into the cabin. I think a lot of companies are starting to do that these days. Some people complain about it. I think it's okay. I don't think it's overdone in this car. There's actually, in your modes, you can sort of set if you want that noise on or off. I have it on because I think it adds to the experience. I think noise is very important. The braking. So the braking in this car with the performance pack gets the rotors and the pads and the monoblock calipers from the Golf R. So this car has, you know, brakes that are from a car which has another, you know, 70 horsepower. The Golf R makes like 300 horsepower. So this car is honestly over-braked, but you know, that's great. I've had to do some emergency stops, and if you're going in the back roads, it's really great if you're moving, because you can really get up and then really stop if you need to. So definitely the brakes are a huge bonus on this car. So when you combine the brakes and the engine, this car is also on, you know, 18-inch wheels. It's on fairly sporty tires, P0 all season. It's pretty good at handling. So I just think generally overall, this is really a great car for back roads. You're never going to run into any trouble. And so it's really a joy to drive. You can really go through the gears, and it's just fun.
So what have we learned today about this car? It's great to drive, it's spacious, practical, and feels more expensive than it actually is. This one equipped here is over $30,000, but the fact that a well-spec'd one can be under $30,000 is a bargain, especially considering the fact that a lightly used GTI is in the very low 20s. In a way, it's kind of a blessing that Volkswagen had its scandal, because the current resale prices are simply ridiculous. I hope more people figure it out, because more GTIs on the road always spells more fun.